Hi Josh, thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited to talk to you and to find out a bit more about your roles as both a dramaturg and a playwright as well. So thank you for joining us. Can we just start with you telling us a bit about what you're up to at the moment?
Yeah, literally at the moment, I'm at the Graeae offices, which is sort of a rare treat at the minute. We're still sort of easing back after the pandemic. We're being especially cautious because we work with a lot of vulnerable people. So yeah, it's lovely to be here. I am splitting my time between Graeae and my own writing, and I'm working on a commission for the Almeida. And the deadline is fast approaching for that first draft.
That's amazing. So how did you get into theatre in the first place?
I went to a school in South London, and they were very keen. They were quite fanatical about extracurricular activities. And when I was about 15, they noticed I wasn't doing any, and they were like, "It's either this or sports. It's either the school play or sports." So I went for the school play, and I actually loved it. I loved the acting, and I thought I'd do that. I think a lot of people start that way, don't they? They go, you want to be a star, and then you get sort of more realistic. And then, and then going into uni, I was aware that drama games were really not my thing. So I think that pushed me into playwriting, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You've had similar experiences at uni there with drama games. But you've obviously done quite a lot of work now as a playwright, and I know you took part in the Royal Court's. Is it the long form playwriting group?
Long form group, yeah. That was brilliant. It's weird. I guess, I have had quite a bit of work now, but that feels like sort of after 10 years of trying, and then suddenly people started reading it and getting in touch and stuff. So the Royal Court thing came about because I sent a play to them, I think in 2018, and they liked it, and they kept me in mind for this long form group, which is just sort of, Leo Butler facilitated it, who's amazing, but that was kind of it was a kind of about fostering peer-to-peer support. And at the time it was called something different, but none of us wanted to leave, and then it became the long form group, and I think that's what it's called now. It was really weird, but it was just amazing to be. They select you sort of not based on anything other than whether you'll all sort of get along and you'll spark off each other. So it was sort of, people were curated, and it was lovely, and everybody got on, and we all learned so much from each other and Leo, and a couple of people have definitely like lifelong friends now, and it was just amazing, and people are still sending each other work and stuff, so really good. I was really lucky to be part of that. Absolutely amazing.
That is amazing. And it's great as well for people watching this, our subscribers are emerging playwrights who probably send their plays off to places like the Royal Court, so it's actually really great to hear that someone sent their play off, and something, we've heard of something coming from it, and a group like that, which sounds really, really valuable as well. You spoke there about a lot of the benefits. I think the peer-to-peer, and the support that you're getting there. What would you say in general, is the benefit of these writing groups? Are there any other kind of major benefits apart from that?
I think, writing is really lonely, isn't it? And sorry, this sounds a bit like sentimental, but it is. It's really lonely, and I think there's a reason playwrights become playwrights. I think they probably, even if they're quite reticent or introverted, they do like being around people and being in rehearsal rooms, and that isn't guaranteed, is it? That's not like every day of the week. So having that sort of group, you can sort of do it with your own friends, can't you? But to have it, and also to have it in a space like the Royal Court, to have it sort of validated by a place with as much like kudos as that, was really important. You really felt held by them. The literary team there are brilliant. Obviously they're inundated with scripts because they're like Wembley to writers, but yeah, that was really cool. So having them, and then having people read your work. We'd often read our work. We take it in turns to read work out loud as a group. Group members taking parts and stuff, and then just kind of becoming a bit of a hive mind. Yeah. We had to write a play while we were on that group from scratch, and sort of everybody became authors in a way, like almost co-authors, not quite that extreme, but like everybody's feedback was genuinely going into that play. And the play I wrote, I think, was definitely stronger for that. I also picked a play and a topic that was like really, I was finding really hard to do on my own. It was like taking a lot out of me. So being in that group and having that support, the emotional support as well, was really helpful. Sorry, that was elaborating, but
no, that's fantastic, isn't it? And I think, to have that feedback during the early stages of writing a play, it's invaluable, and it's so rare, isn't it? Because, quite often we sit at home and we write the first draft, maybe even, 4 or 5 drafts before anybody even sees the script. So I think, to be able to test those ideas in a group of people who you can trust, you'll give you really valuable feedback. That's fantastic, really. And did you? So you've been commissioned by the Almeida as well. Is that a different play, or is that the play?
Yeah, that's a different one. That was like a sort of fresh. Yeah, that's my first like proper commission. So that's amazing and daunting. But that came about. I sent them I wrote a short play for them for their key worker cycle. So that was about, I think it was supposed to be 20 minutes, but it ran under. But that was a really good experience. And off the back of that, they asked if I had any ideas for a full length play. And I gave them a few, and they only liked one, I think. But they were really excited by that idea. And yeah, that's what I'm working on now. And that's part of the Genesis Almeida, I can't remember what it's called, like big plays, something. It's basically about getting writers who've only really written for smaller spaces to think bigger, which is, again, amazing. And that is another group. And obviously that's been impacted by lockdown. So we haven't seen each other in person as much as with the long form group I did with the court, but it's still been great. Just again, like there's a monthly workshop, and I just know I'm going to see people and talk about my play, and they're going to talk about their plays. And again, these groups are amazing.
Yeah, it gives you feedback and some accountability as well, I guess, because when you're working on something, you've got to kind of share it with people.
Exactly.
It really helps with the motivation as well, I suppose.
Definitely. And then Stephanie Bain, who's a literary manager there, and Salvat, who's the deputy, they are again brilliant. Yeah, just there are great people out there, as you know, from doing this series and talking to people. So
absolutely, yeah. I think that's the thing. I think part of the big thing, one of our aims is just to connect these people together, really, because I think there's just so many people out there who want to help new writers and support them and make new writing as well. It's great, to be connected in that way. And it's exciting what you said about writing bigger plays, plays for bigger spaces as well, because I think quite often as new writers, we kind of, obviously for production and financial reasons, we kind of very much perhaps tailoring our work to those smaller spaces. So I think that sounds like a really exciting opportunity to write something bigger.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, we sort of instinctively write economically, don't we? Like thinking about the top room of a pub or whatever, or studio spaces. But yeah, it's great to be sort of let loose.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you sound very busy as a playwright, and obviously your role at Graeae is a literary role as well. So the kind of difference between the role of a playwright and a dramaturg, do you find that you have to kind of put a different hat on for both of those, or do the two roles kind of collide?
Sort of mix of both. I think in terms of the actual act of dramaturgy, I think it's kind of like playwriting but backwards. So I think it's sort of the same thing in a sense. So you, as a playwright, you start with an idea and then you work on the play, blah blah blah. But and then as a dramaturg, you get something, whether it's a really early draft or something more complete, and then you work backwards and you try and work out, talking to the playwright, what the original idea was, and if the draft they have is actually true to that, if that play is the best expression of that initial idea that it can be. So I think they're really closely linked. I think it's not a problem, like it's a really lovely problem to have, but I think the only issues I run into is when I'm sort of representing writers, because that's part of my job as well, like knocking on theatres' doors and kind of saying, oh, you should read this person's work or whatever. And I find it really tricky yeah, sort of managing that relationship as both like maybe a writer where I'd like to be like, oh, please read my work. But actually it's my job in that moment to say, no, read these writers' work, or vice versa. Sometimes I go the other way and I should be talking about me and I'm actually talking about other writers. So that's something I'm learning. I'm getting better at it, but it is really hard. But otherwise, I think those two roles really complement each other. I don't want to stop doing either. I feel like when I started, I felt there was I was imagining a pressure to kind of like choose, but I'm absolutely refusing to choose now. They're both great.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? And do you find that your experience as a dramaturg, does that inform your writing process at all when you're working on your own stuff?
Yeah, totally. And again, in the opposite direction, like if, I feel like I can establish a rapport with writers just from having gone through that awful experience of writing a first draft or whatever. So I feel I can connect on that level. It's absolutely not essential to be a dramaturg and be able to do that, but I feel that's one strength I have. And then, the other way, just reading loads of scripts. I read loads of scripts, and then also coming across problems that are also like creative problems, like you're just exercising that part of your brain that you will then take to your own writing as well. Yeah, they totally feed into each other both ways.
Yeah, I can imagine really that that kind of process as well, at kind of looking at other scripts and how they work. I find that myself when I'm reading other people's scripts, and I'm starting to think about, because I'm kind of separated from that in a way, I can think about things like structure, and then it helps me, with my own work as well. Do you find that would you say you're your own dramaturg? When is it easy to kind of, if you've finished, say, a first draft, when you approach the editing process, do you think that some of your experience as a dramaturg is kind of, affects how you approach things like redrafting?
Yeah, I think a little bit. As I've been in this role longer and longer and done more script reading and stuff, I think I have learned to be a little bit more objective when it comes to getting that first draft and then looking at it. And then I can be quite ruthless, which I know I couldn't be 3-4 years ago. But also then sometimes I've got that sort of dramaturgy voice while I'm writing. And I think that's really dangerous, because then you're editing as you go, and that's not good, is it? You end up,
not great to get things finished, is it, if you're editing as you go along?
Yeah, definitely. So I need to get better at that. But still, like I would, in terms of like, I don't think I can totally be my own dramaturg. You still need those other pairs of eyes, those fresh pairs of eyes. I think that's absolutely essential. And if I was thinking I could just do my own dramaturgy, I'd miss out on that opportunity. Although I would say you can have too many outside eyes, can't you? You need to sort of do a strict, like small list of people you trust, I think.
Absolutely, it's a balance, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. What about your role at Graeae then? So you're the literary coordinator there.
Yeah, I started as literary administrator, and I was working with the brilliant Nikki Miles-Wildin, who was the associate director here. And then when she left, I went up to literary coordinator, I think. But still, admin is a huge part of my role, and I don't think I'm especially good at it, or that I enjoy it that much. But it's also, again, knowing from how as a writer, if I send a script or I send an email, I'm there agonizing over the longer it takes for somebody to reply, the more I'm like in turmoil. And I'm still guilty of that, because it's like 3 days a week here, so things slip out of my hands and stuff. But that motivates me to do the part of the job that I don't love. But otherwise, it's kind of a split between mentoring and dramaturgy. So I increasingly, since the lockdowns, I do sort of one-on-ones with writers who have disabilities or whatever that can mean that they struggle to talk to theatres, or that it impacts their writing in different ways. So sometimes it's about really talking about their script, and other times it's talking about them and just being that support, again, that peer-to-peer support. Because a lot of the writers I'm talking to are at the same level I am as a writer, I think. So it's kind of like, there's sometimes a little bit of therapy, actually, like not to undermine what therapists do, but there's a tiny, tiny bit of that. And I love that. I love just connecting with people, and I love the one-on-one thing. The more doing more and more of that, it feels like that connection is more meaningful than some of the approaches I've tried in the past. And then there's lots of script reading. We had a massive script window, which was interrupted by me getting COVID, but we got through it, and that was amazing. Found loads of exciting new writers, so hoping to do more of that. And then the other thing is, like, at the minute we're about to put in an application for further funding for the literary department. So me and my current colleague Kate Lovell, who's the associate director here, we are planning activity, just planning loads of things, loads of stuff. That she's a writer as well, so we're just putting forward ideas that we would want to take part in as writers as well. So that's great. Again, all feeds in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, I suppose, that being a playwright as well, you know what you want and find valuable as a writer, so you can plan those things with that kind of knowledge. And it's really interesting, and I think with this series, the different people we've spoken to, everyone's role is a little bit different. And, I think that practical side of things, you talked about having to do admin alongside that, but also knowing that as a writer, how important it is to hear back from people. And I think some of the other people, they talked about having to do work with budgets and things like that. And I think these are all things that as writers, when we send our work off to a theatre, we submit it, and we don't necessarily know about all this that goes on behind the scenes. And I think this is what's been really insightful about this series, because it kind of, it shows us we send it off and there is someone behind the computer who's maybe pushed for time, trying to reply to everybody. So I think there's something quite, there's something positive about finding that out and knowing that it's not someone ignoring you or not wanting to reply or not reading your work. It's just that you really push for time there.
Absolutely. And I was guilty of that before I got this role, of just seeing literary managers, literary associates, whatever, as sort of inhuman gatekeepers, and I just be raging against them quietly in my own head. But they are just people who love theatre as much as you, love scripts as much as you, and are underfunded, have no time, and are expected to do loads with very little. And I guess there are genuine gatekeepers out there who need to be challenged, but I think most people at least don't have the intention to be that, right?
Absolutely, and I think that's really come across during this series, the whole gatekeeper idea, but that these people actually, they want to read more plays, and that there's just not enough time to get through them all, and even if you can, there's not enough money or time to produce them all anyway. So it's people who kind of, what I've really taken from this is actually people who work in the literary department, they really do want to support and help writers, and they really, want to help them to get their work on stage, which I think is something really valuable for people to take away. So it's interesting, for you to say then about all the different strands of your job, because it sounds like your day is made up of so many different strands. And what's a normal day look like for you? Do you kind of have to, or is there no such thing?
I think it's so, I mean, I don't even know what a normal week is. Like at the minute, I'm flexing my hours. So I'll probably do in the run up to this deadline I have in November as a writer, I'll probably do fewer days. And then after that, I'll do more days, because then we come into proper planning and implementing, hopefully, because we'll hopefully get the funding. It's really hard to say. I keep trying to enforce some sort of routine on myself, but it always goes to
Is it just a case of you kind of have to deal with whatever is more urgent?
I think so. There must be a better way of doing it and managing it, but I haven't found it yet, but hopefully in time.
It's always like that, I think, isn't it? In theory, but it's hard, especially when you've got lots of different strands like that. I can imagine it's not easy to keep everything, juggle everything, really. Do you have any advice for people wanting to work in a literary department, how they might be able to get into that role?
I mean, it's easier said than done, but I would totally recommend becoming a script reader for any organization. It's just that was how I started. I actually was reading for Tallower, And now I'm reading for the Royal Court, and I've done a bit for the Royal Exchange, which is how I know Suzanne Bell. And it's an amazing experience. And then if you're a writer as well, that's a great way of seeing how brutal that process has to be, in a sense, because you get inundated and whatever. But yeah, I would really recommend that, because you're not just, because you sort of you hear a lot of advice of like, oh, read more plays, but often you're reading finished, polished products. You're pulling Harold Pinter off the shelf, like in a volume that's edited and immaculate and whatever. But reading like raw scripts, new scripts from people who've never written before, or from people who haven't been heard before or listened to before, that's valuable. And then when you find one that you just want to champion, and that's an amazing experience, and then you become an advocate for the writer as well. So if you can do that, that is brilliant. And then probably a step before that, what I did was just harass loads of people for coffees and things, and maybe a handful said yes. I'd be more than willing to do that if people wanted to do that, or have a Zoom or whatever. And then and then once people have a face to your name and know you, then you're sort of maybe not at the top of their mind, but like you're in there, you're in the background. So if anything ever came up, you could be recommended for it or thought about. Yeah, that's kind of all I have. It is hard though. Like there are very few positions. And few sort of, and the problem is like the first role you get will always be admin. And I don't think the best dramaturgs and script readers and writers are necessarily always the best administrators, but that's obviously the first rung. So if you can get an admin job and practice that, that's also good, like even in any industry really, because so many of those skills you'll need for your first rung of the ladder in literary stuff, I think.
Actually that's been kind of common theme. Other people we've spoken to as well, to kind of go in and, I suppose the admin side of it isn't always the thing that comes naturally to creative people, is it? But that's the bit that's kind of important as well, I guess. And in terms of becoming a script reader in the first place, did you just do that? Did you just contact different theatres and say, I'm here and I can read some scripts if you like?
I went for a job and I didn't get it, and the person who interviewed me still was willing again to have a coffee, which was just amazing. And then after a conversation there, this was Jane Fallowfield. There's no point being coy, but Jane Fallowfield is now the literary manager at the Royal Court. But she's been such a champion of me and my work as both a writer and a script reader and a dramaturg. But she had a coffee with me, and then as a result of that, I ended up reading for Tallower and then sort of following her when she went to the Royal Court. So that's a mix of luck and just connecting with somebody, and just if you have a job interview and it doesn't go well, or if you meet somebody and something doesn't come of it, just push for that second kind of meeting, and you never know what will come out of it, I guess.
Obviously you did go through the process of sending your work to the Royal Court, and then you got on their long form writers group, and you're commissioned now. So would you have any advice for aspiring playwrights who are sending their work out and hoping to get something from it, whether it be production or support?
I think be patient and be kind to yourself, and I think it's sort of being challenged now, but for a while there was a sort of cult of youth, wasn't there? And there was all these playwrights who from like the age of 19 and really, really young were getting their first big play and whatever. But I know a lot of those people then suffered because they weren't sort of supported by those theatres going on in their career. But I think it happens. I think loads of people, I probably really properly started when I was like 22, and I'm 32 now. So it took about, any success I've had has been in the last 2 or 3 years. So it took a really long time for anything to kick off. So I guess practice resilience, practice patience, and look after yourself in the meantime. It's brutal, isn't it? And then as a writer, I think I again, this routine thing, I've gone through that whole process of thinking, if I get up at this time and I start writing at this time, then I'll be brilliant, everything will be amazing. But I think they're overrated. I think just kind of write when you can. Literally whenever you can, even if you do, and even word counts. I think you'll do more some days and less or fewer another day. And I've also learned recently, I think over talking an idea can, before you've actually written it, can really suck the wind out of it. I've found that I just kept talking about this great idea I had, and now, and I think I used up too much energy talking about it and not enough writing it.
Yeah, that's really good advice, actually. I've done that before as well, where you talk about an idea so much, maybe because you haven't got time to start actually writing it. And then by the time you come to start doing writing, you've kind of, the excitement's kind of gone. You almost talked yourself out of it. So that's really good advice.
I think you've learned then, well, as you're talking about it, you've found you get really good at talking about it. The more you do it, you get really good at talking about it. And then you're like, oh, the writing is never going to match up to this story I've told verbally. But that's, so I'm struggling with that, which is why I'm not talking about the play I'm writing. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good idea, I think. No, that's really good advice. And I think it's, it's really valuable for people watching this to kind of think about, things taking a long time. We do hear a lot of, these really young playwrights, particularly sort of a few years ago, getting their debut play at fantastic theatres, and it can make people feel quite disheartened because you think, I've been doing this for years and years and I'm not getting anywhere. But actually, the big takeaway is that it does it takes a long time, doesn't it? It's not something that usually happens overnight.
Yeah, and also I think you need to find other work that makes you happy as well alongside that, because even when you get there, like, these people don't pay much for commissions or plays. Like, it takes a long time to be filling the National Theatre, even if that's the end goal, and that might not be your vibe anyway. So find something else that you're passionate about and love, and that feeds your writing, I think, which is what I've managed to do. I've been lucky there.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of helps you to stay creative and motivated, I guess, if you're not doing something that kind of makes you, sucks the creativity out of you every day, So that's really good advice as well. Thank you. Thanks very much. That's really valuable conversation. And so many interesting things there. Thank you.
Not at all. It was a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for your newsletter and everything you've been doing. I think I applied for the Kudos Royal Court thing that I saw on your newsletter. Led Royal Court, taking interest in me. I didn't get that, but so you never know. And I still look at your newsletter and go through things. Yeah, it's great.